Big thanks to Regular Studio and Top Hat Studios for the review copy. As time marches on and we get deeper into the modern resurgence of 3D platformers, we're seeing indie devs venture away from the N64 style platformers and into the PS2 style of platformers. This is evident in some of this year's releases like Big Hops, Demon Tides, and Mr. Sleepy Man. MOTORSLICE is yet another example of this trend towards the early to mid-2000s school of game design, with its obvious inspirations of Prince of Persia and Shadow of the Colossus. Well, does it reach the colossal heights of its predecessors? Let's talk about it. With a lot of indie games, there's a big focus on replicating games of the past. So much so that some games end up not having an identity of their own. This is thankfully not the case with MOTORSLICE. Yes, you'll be running along walls like the Prince of Persia, and you'll be taking down massive beings like Wander and Shadow of the Colossus. But make no mistake, MOTORSLICE is not just combining these two games and slapping a sci-fi filter on it. Our titular MOTORSLICer is called P, and she's accompanied by Orbi, a flying orb-shaped bot who acts as your camera throughout the game. Your objective is to get to the top of this megastructure while slicing through any and all machines that stand in your way, regardless of size. Thankfully, our protagonist is well equipped for this mission with her trusty chainsaw, which acts as both a weapon to annihilate anything that gets in her way and as a tool that helps you traverse the environment. You might be wondering, how does a chainsaw help you traverse the environment? Well, that's a good question. Throughout the game, you're not just going to be running along walls or swinging off of poles, but you'll also be using your chainsaw to drill into parts of the megastructure, allowing you to cross great distances both horizontally and vertically. When you're not hanging off your chainsaw, you'll be swinging it into your enemies. The game's combat system isn't really deep at all. You essentially have just one attack throughout the entire game, and all regular-sized enemies die in one hit, so that one attack is more than enough. To balance this out, you are also very easily killable and can die in 1 or 2 hits. This might sound like it elevates attention in the combat encounters, but I never really felt my heart rate go up while fighting one of these machines. You can parry an enemy by attacking them as they're about to attack you, and you can roll. But more often than not, you can just brute force through these sequences. Now this might sound like a negative, and it slightly is, but I still did find myself really enjoying some of the combat encounters. There's just something very satisfying about entering an arena, scanning for enemies, parkouring around and taking them out one by one. It's not on the level of a Batman Arkham game, but it's still pretty fun. It also does help that slicing through his machines covers you in tar and oil, like a sci-fi samurai with a chainsaw instead of a sword. I actually found this to be one of the game's core strengths, the sense of space. I mentioned previously how the secondary character Orbi acts as your camera throughout the game, and though it might sound simple, it really contributes to the world they've built. Parkouring around on sand or falling from great heights dirties the lens in your camera, which you can clean by clicking in the right stick. Pressing any of the directional buttons has P grab Orbi for selfie mode. Regular Studio does a great job of making this world feel real. The tar that covers you after a combat encounter really grounds P in the world. Paired with her holding her hand up to the walls as she walks by them, and how she starts breathing heavier as she exerts energy jumping around, this all really helps make this feel like more than just a bunch of assets thrown together. This sense of cohesion can also be seen in the world itself. Throughout the game, you'll be slowly rising to the top of this megastructure, and instead of having segmented levels where you're told that you're higher up than before, you actually see your progress. After completing a level, you cross a bridge and can see how much more you have to go by looking above, or you can see how much progress you've made by looking at the bridges you've already passed below you. It's very obvious that one of Regular Studio's strong points is their world building, because all of these decisions really add up and make you forget that this game was just made by 2 people. Unlike a lot of other recent platformers, MOTORSLICE is a linear game. This does not mean you're running down hallways the entire game though. There are a lot of wide and open spaces, some so wide that I actually got lost plenty of times in my playthrough of the game. The cycle goes, you start a level, you're introduced to a central mechanic, be it combat or platforming focused, and make your way through areas that utilize this mechanic in various ways, and at the end of the level, you face a massive mega machine that you have to take down. I don't want to brush past this aspect of the game. The boss fights here are fantastic. They're nothing too hard, but they're all amazing set pieces. These boss fights were definitely the highlight of the game for me. The feeling of climbing and platforming around and on these colossal machines, and slowly taking them down piece by piece, is something no other platformer has captured for me. There's a good amount of variety of these boss fights as well. It's not all just big trucks. I'm just trying not to show too many of these because I really do think they're best experienced as you play the game for the first time. So, from everything I've talked about, this game sounds fantastic, right? Prince of Persia meets Shadow of the Colossus with a super distinct looking female protagonist climbing a megastructure and hunting down machines using a chainsaw. That sounds like a dream game. Well, as I'm sure you've deduced from the title of this video, the game unfortunately has a bunch of flaws weighing it down for me. Let's start off with the most obvious one. It's been great seeing the rise of female protagonists in platformers over the past few years, with games like Demon Turf and Tides, Pseudogalia, Froggen, and a bunch of others. MOTORSLICE adds to the list of iconic female protagonists in the genre, but is unfortunately so overly sexualized that I feel like having a female protagonist here actually negatively impacts the game. Now, I'm not a prude. Sexualizing your characters can be fine, but my god, it is not at all handled well here. Throughout the game, there are optional dialogue sequences where P monologues, and you're given a choice, as Orby, between two dialogue options. One of the options is usually a corporate one, telling P to focus on the mission or something, while the other is extremely horny, uncomfortably so at times. This is all thankfully optional, so if I'm ever to replay this, I'm skipping past these dialogue sequences. There's a few more examples of this weird over-sexualization throughout the game, but I'm not going to go into every detail. Just know the writing here is not the best. That aside, there's a few issues on the gameplay front as well. MOTORSLICE borrows the movement mechanics from the Prince of Persia series, but unfortunately makes it a lot more frustrating. Whereas as the Prince, you hold a designated button to run along the walls, P automatically runs along walls when you jump towards them at a certain direction. This might sound like a good thing, but it unfortunately is amongst the many reasons I felt like I was fighting the controls for the entire game. There were countless times throughout the game where I felt like I jumped into a wall almost perpendicularly, only to end up wall running to my death. There are also issues of P deciding to take my analog stick direction as a suggestion and jump somewhere completely different, or her just not running up a wall or not grabbing a ledge and falling to her death. One of Prince of Persia's defining features that MOTORSLICE does not borrow is its time rewinding mechanic. Making a mistake in Prince of Persia is not a massive issue, because you just hold a button and undo the mistake. With the absence of this rewind mechanic, control issues are just that much more frustrating. My total death count by the end of the game was around 500, and really feels like 70% of those deaths were because of the controls. This goes even for the small things. One example is the roll mechanic. Jumping off of high platforms causes you to momentarily get stunned, and the way to avoid this is to hold the roll button as you fall, which causes you to roll when you land. Now imagine jumping off a high platform onto a platform with not much surface area. Well, you kind of roll off the platform and die. So even small oversights like that just contributed to the frustration. It wasn't until after I beat the game and after I wrote this review that I realized that there was a retry button, which meant that every time I died, I would sit there and watch P fall to her death, which usually would take 5 seconds-ish. And let's say 200 of my 500 deaths involved me falling for around 5 seconds. Well, that's around 15 minutes of me just watching P fall to her death because of some control issue. Obviously, if I had known about this restart button, this wouldn't have been as much of an issue, but I don't think it makes it a non-issue. Nevertheless, this frustration unfortunately seeps into the rest of the game. As you make your way through this mega structure, you'll find these sleeping orbs that you'll need to pick up and take to a checkpoint to fully collect. In concept, these are great. For the first few hours, I was all in on collecting these. A bit deeper into the game, when I pick them up only to die because of controls and lose them and have to collect them all over again, I just kind of got frustrated and I started ignoring a few here and there. I still try to go for them a few times, but after the 4th try, I just skip them and move on with the game. The game also breaks my streak of praising the soundtrack. The soundtrack here is good and it fits pretty well with the world they've built, but it's not overly memorable. You'll be spending a lot of the game hearing the same few tracks or just listening to the ambience in the world. I know this is a review and I'm supposed to be honest, but I really do hate being negative about these games. This game was made by 2 people, which is insanely impressive. There's so much good here. The world they've built is extremely unique. The character design for P is great. The boss fights are fantastic. The game visually looks really impressive, with its distinct brutalist look. It's just that the negatives unfortunately keep it from reaching its true potential. And I do think potential is a good word to describe the game. There is so much potential here. Though I don't think the game is nearly as good as the games that inspired it, which were, to be fair, developed by a lot more people, there is a chance that the sequel dethroned them. I think I'd be there day one for a sequel with a more engaging story, one that's hopefully a bit less horny, maybe more involved combat, and a refined movement system. I'm not usually a fan of sequels. I usually prefer the developer move on to a new series, but MOTORSLICE 2 could be a fantastic game. MOTORSLICE 1 though is a very flawed but very ambitious game. It's also a meatier game than I expected. I spent around 10 hours of the game, with probably 60% of my time on my gaming laptop and the other 40% on a Steam Deck. The deck handles the game decently, with a frame rate ranging from 30 to 60 throughout the game. The game is available on Steam, PS5 and Xbox Series X and S for $20. Is it a recommend for me? Well, even with all the negatives I mentioned, I cannot tell you not to play the game. I still do think positively of the game and can conditionally recommend it, provided you can overlook the excessive sexualization of the protagonist and don't mind the frustrating controls. Like I said, there's a lot good in this game and I think people should experience that. Whether that's for $20 or less is for you to decide. Thanks for watching.